Okay, it's mid-June. We're here on one of my farms. It's a project I started about 3 or 4 years ago when I bought this place, but it's really dry right now. We had to kind of wait for the farmers' beans to get in before we plant our food plots, because if not, the deer will just come in and mow them off. We brought the old no-till planter out of the shed to use it because we don't want to work up the ground, lose any moisture. We're having a lot of high 90-degree days and not much sight of rain coming. So what we're going to do is try to get in here and no-till a bunch of different varieties of beans we're testing in these plots. Okay, we're on a farm that I purchased about 4 years ago. And when I first bought this farm, it was basically old cow pasture that had been grown up and some pretty good woods. But I love this property the way it laid out. It had a big ridge here. It had a diversity on it. It was really good. It had a little cedar thicket, some draw, some fingers. But when I first started looking at how to lay out this property, I noticed there's some big areas. And one area I liked was this food plot. The main destination plot is kind of shaped like a big C right here. So I located a blind on the back side, and we got the food source where the deer travel around that main food source coming by that blind. And then on the far corner over here to the north, I set a blind up right on the fence line for a south location to hunt with a south wind. And just from hunting the farm the last few years, that is an area I usually put in some green food source for late in the fall. And last year proved to be excellent for me. A lot of deer come in there and fed. Even late season we found some good sheds in those areas as well. But that area right now is planted in soybeans, and the reason it is because my farm's all corn and there's very little beans in this area. So every inch of food source I got on this farm that's not in clover will be planted in soybeans. Knowing that I'll go back in and tear them out this fall, I'll put a green blend in there so I've got something green to hunt over for south winds early season, or even in November we're getting some south winds here and there. But when I get a south wind, that's the blind I got to be in. That's a good spot. Okay, now we're at the meat and potatoes of the farm. This is the main focal part on this whole farm. It's got the ridge that comes through on the one side, drops off into a creek system. When I got this farm, to start with, it was old growed up cow pasture. So I had to go in here and get an excavator and pull out the trees, clean up the roots and everything to start with in here. The thing I've seen over the years is, as far as what I'm planting here, I can draw in so many deer from miles away to this farm. Is this food plot right here has to be my main source for late season, and I do my perimeter ones for some greens and some other products for later on. But a few years ago I planted some corn in here for test plots, and the deer just devoured some of that corn in here, so I had to go back and replant it. But this year we're concentrating on all soybeans in here at this time. Now I'm going to plant 11 different types of soybeans in this 8 acres here, just to monitor the soybeans to see which varieties the deer feed on the most. I'll do some tissue samples on them as well. And then I'll come back in late season and evaluate those plots. If some of the beans aren't doing as well, if they've been browsed off, I may plant a fall product in some of those areas. But this will be soybeans for late season when it's cold. Come right off the road, right up the ridge, 100 yards in here. The deer have plenty of bedding that away. They have the CRP field over here, the switchgrass field they're in. They have the big ridge that's been logged this year, actually, and going to have more bedding in it. So everything's going to be coming from the north this way for late season for beans, and we'll have some greens in here. Right here's a good trail they come up, but they come up out of this bottom from this creek and come up to this field. So these treetops, they're going to go around some of them, but it's going to get really thick in here by next year. This spot here is one of my favorite spots on the farm. It's actually a big ridge that goes down and hooks two big timbers together. During the rut, this is an awesome place to be. There's a lot of bucks cruising through here. As a matter of fact, last year, just down the ridge a ways, I had an awesome hunt and harvested a really nice buck on this farm. Okay, I just shot a nice buck, and I watched him go over here on this ridge about 40 yards from where I shot him at and tip over. So not a better feeling in the world than when you put an arrow in a big one and you watch him go a little ways and fall down. So okay, this ridge is actually about 80 yards wide, and as the deer funnel back and forth through on top here, I've got a stand site located over at the edge, and what I wanted to do was create them to have to travel closer to that stand site. So a couple years ago, I come in here and hinge cut a bunch of trees, which did what I wanted it to do. However, the whole ridge was still wide open, and there wasn't a lot of deer bedding in here, or if they did, they took off quickly. So a 2-year process took place. A couple years ago, I got a forester in here. We went around marked trees. I met with 4 or 5 different loggers to get a logger that want to do the process the way I want it done. I wanted some treetops left in certain areas. I wanted my logging roads in certain areas. Now that we've had the logging done on this ridge, sunlight's coming in, I can already tell how much thicker the brush is in here, and we're going to have bedding in here on this rut ridge here as well. So it's just going to add to this farm and make it better. Okay, that kind of concludes today. We're getting a few cameras put out. We've wrapped up our soybean corn planting for the spring. This farm's a project we started 4 years ago. We're kind of showing you some things we've done in the past. We've got a few other things to do, in the future. If you stay tuned, we'll tune you in on those and show you what we're doing. But overall, what we've done to this farm has drastically improved the amount of deer we're holding for traveling where we want. The plan would be, here in a few weeks of letting these cameras soak, is come in here because we're locating them in areas to see where the deer are traveling with some treetops down, some different locations. We may have to tweak a few tree stand sites or hunting blinds, or we may move a few treetops and make it where the deer travel where we want them to. But we're going to work on this summertime, we're going to be working on travel patterns and location on stand sites and ambush areas for them. The The success on this farm or any other farm can hinge greatly by the success of the food plot. However, that's just one key ingredient. If you're looking for help on your farm, consistently holding deer and seeing deer more often, then look us up on Facebook, Instagram, or go to www.elitelandconsulting.com.